video in regards to getting your CDL, bro, getting your endorsements, and what that process looks like. For me, I graduated my CDL trucking school at Central Tech. I decided to take a chance. I was in basically corporate sales most of my life, telecommunications my whole life. I worked for a big company, Cox Communications, for about 8 years. Left there, went to smaller fiber optic company, did some project managing, and then I ended up getting laid off there, and then I went and sold security. And I got an opportunity through a program to get my CDL commercial license. So one of my friends sent me a link. I'm here in Oklahoma. I'm in the Tulsa area, and one of my friends sent me a link about basically getting a commercial license for free. And I was like, shit, why not? Because I really was thinking about the future. I'm thinking about AI and what's coming down the road as far as jobs and making yourself useful, basically adding as much tools in my belt as possible, for the next few years while I'm still relatively young. I'm in my mid-30s. So anyways, I enrolled in, they called me up. I signed up for the program. They called me up and asked me if I wanted to do it. And I said, heck yeah, why not? So I kind of made plans. I got a pretty big tax return, so I used that for bills for a couple months while I went to CDL school, and I ended up attending Central Tech in Drumright, Oklahoma, starting in the beginning of March. Went through the process. I told myself I didn't want any restrictions on my license going into this process. And to me, that's important, and I'll get to that later. The fact of not being restricted on your license, because it opens up so many opportunities. But anyways, went through driving school. To me, it was fun. Central Tech, if you're looking for a CDL school, I highly recommend it. If you're in Oklahoma, there's a ton of driving schools out here, but Central Tech teaches you the right way. The instructors are excellent. Shout out to them boys and girls out there at Central Tech doing it right. So ended up finishing out. For me, it was relatively easy once I learned how to shift. A 10-speed truck, but the maneuvering and all that stuff was easy. It's common sense. You just got to clear your mind. Oh yeah, one thing is important. Make sure you're clean. Make sure you're. I was a big time weed smoker. I'll be honest. I had to quit, and I told myself that if I'm gonna go into this journey, I had to quit weed. So I gave myself about a month, and I'm pretty active. I'm in pretty good shape, so it could vary. Take that with a grain of salt. But once I was able to take the test, I got my tanker endorsement while I was in CDL school, and I think I tested for my triples and doubles, and I failed it. I got like a 77 out of 80. So I was like, F it, I'll go ahead and get it later. So we'll double back on that, but I started focusing on the state test. State test, I passed it the first go. I think I scored second highest in my class as far as the overall scoring. So pat myself on the back there. But the next thing was figuring out jobs. So throughout the process of going to Central Tech, they have various recruiters come through, over-the-road recruiters, flatbed recruiters, mixer driver recruiters, and you kind of have your pick, because out of school they want fresh students where they could teach them on a fresh slate, and you definitely want to dip your toes in and holler at these recruiters and keep your options open, because you need a job getting out of school unless you plan on not working. So I definitely was not going over the road. I have 3 young kids, and I couldn't do it. To me, it wasn't feasible. So for me, some of the jobs that, and this is where it's going to be very important, getting your endorsements and making sure you kind of get ahead of it if you're planning on opening up your options. And that's what I mean by, making sure that you get ahead of the game, because a lot of people, they get the CDL and they just leave it there. But if you want to get a local job, this is what happens. So, there's mixer drivers. There's a company locally, which is where I'm working at right now. I'm not going to say the name of it, but I'm doing it right now. Out of school, I think I took about a week or two to kind of decompress. I graduated in April the 10th. So then I had a couple jobs that hollered at me immediately, and there was one job in particular. It was a local. They're based in Blackwell, Oklahoma. It's a fuel hauling job, and that was the company I initially applied for first, and that's where I was super interested because they didn't require any experience. They, a lot of jobs they want at least a year of tractor trailer experience on top of all your endorsements. So the driver manager called me the day I graduated. I'm sitting there in a freaking, I'm not gonna lie, I'm being pretty transparent, in a blood the plasma. I was in a plasma line the day after I graduated, because I'm like, I got some money left over, but just running out. I don't have any money coming in. So he calls me and I'm like, shit, wow, yeah, I'm super interested. You're the first company I actually applied for. And I had a couple of other companies that called me. I can't remember them off the top, but they kind of fell through. They didn't go through because I didn't have any experience and I didn't have any endorsements besides my tankers. Tankers doesn't mean shit if you don't have your hazmat. So, long story short, and you make sure your resume's on point. Like, you want to definitely be touching up your resume as you're going through school, making sure you're reaching out to different companies and keeping your options open. So he calls me and he wants to, meet up, and I meet up with him and we have like an initial conversation at the yard, and he likes me. He wants to give me a shot, but they want you to test drive. And also, you have to have endorsements. Like I keep saying, in order to do some of these jobs, you got to have endorsements. And without my endorsements on my license, I couldn't really do anything at that point. So I told him, hey, this is like April the 14th, so about 2 days after our conversation, we meet up. And he tells me I need my hazmat, so I go to TSA. There's a whole process of getting your hazmat endorsement. And, getting your other endorsements are pretty simple. But the hazmat, you have to go TSA, you have to make an appointment, you have to do a background check. And let me tell you, it takes like 3 weeks for that background check to come back. So if you don't get ahead of it, you get an opportunity, that opportunity may slip away because you didn't start that process. So I started the process. I was waiting. I was checking every day. He's calling me, hit me up like every other few days, like, hey, how's that looking? And it's starting to look bad because 2 weeks in, I'm not getting it back. So at this point, I'm like, I need money. I ended up contacting a recruiter that came to Central Tech, a mixer company, which is what I'm doing now. And they hired me. There's not a lot that goes into doing a mixer truck. It's a Class B job. It pays about $20 an hour, and they pay weekly. Insurance is shit. PTO is shit. You're pretty much, this is like a bottom of the barrel type starter job. And there's different levels of mixer companies. So I would say this: if you're looking to just get experience and get money in your pocket, you could do this out of school, and it's local. So for me, being local was important, and I'll be honest, it is fun. It's cool. It's different. You're on job sites. You're on big construction sites. You get to see a lot, and we go all over the greater Tulsa area, outside of Tulsa, hauling concrete to work sites. That's pretty much it. You learn how to work a mixer truck. I just got my own truck yesterday. And this has been about 3 weeks of training. So I was riding around, but after about week 1, I was operating the truck and doing everything on the truck and cleaning it out and doing everything with it. So I'm grateful that I had opportunities to work until I got all my endorsements. So long story short, finally, after 3 weeks, I get the email notification like, shit, the TSA says your TSA background came back and it was clean. So TSA background comes back, it's clean. And like I said, if you're in school, you're going to CDL trucking school, and you want to get all your endorsements, I would say do that shit ASAP. Do it as soon as you can. It's $85 to get your TSA background, and then it's another $50 to add those endorsements on your license. My recommendation, as being a guy who just did it, do all of them at the same time, so you don't have to pay $50 every time you add that endorsement to your license. I got my TSA background. I had to go to Service, Oklahoma to actually verify it. You have to do your ELDT as well, which is like a training for hazmat. You do that while you're in trucking school. If it's a reputable trucking school, they do it in there. Central Tech gave us our ELDT while we were in trucking school as we were learning. The only thing we had to do was to do the rest. Long story short, I go into Service, Oklahoma. They close on me, so you have to go early. Like, I went after I got off at like 4 o'clock. They're like, oh yeah, we can't help you. So I was like, fuck you. I was mad. And the whole time, the job is waiting on me for the company I actually want to do. So the next day I go in early. You have to do your test as well. So I had to do my hazmat test in Service, Oklahoma. And also, the lady was nice enough to let me do my triples and doubles, the one I failed while I was in Central Tech. And I did both of them at the same time, and I passed them. It was like super easy. There's apps, there's CDL prep app. I literally sat there and studied for like 2 days, and I think I passed them without missing a question. So I did both of those. I added them on my license the same day, and I was able to go test drive. Now that's a whole different story. I struggled driving an 18 speed. In school, they teach you how to drive a 10 speed. So as I did my first driving test, and it was about a month after I finished school, some of that shit went out the window. They want you to float gears. You know, I was struggling. So he gave me a second shot. I'm not gonna lie. The first shot, I failed. If it was trucking school, I failed. So luckily, the driver manager for the company I'm talking about, he's like, Kurt, he calls me back 3 days later, like, Kurt, I like you. I want to give you another shot. Pull up on me again. So I pulled up on him. I said, screw it. I'm clutching. I'm clutching 1 through 8. I'm skipping the split gears until we kind of get comfortable. So I was able to get through that driving test when I got on the highway and started splitting gears. And if you've never driven an 18 or 13 speed, you can split the individual gears beyond going high. So that's if you're gonna drive fuel trucks, you're gonna have to learn how to drive some of these manuals. So a lot of them are automatics, but this particular company, they drive Peterbilts, and the Peterbilts are 13 or 18 speed. I'm not gonna hold it. I got the offer. I'm going through I went through a drug test yesterday, so I'm just grateful that I was able to kind of get what I wanted out of this journey. I stayed focused. I had to sacrifice smoking tree. Just make sure you're crossing your I's and dotting your T's and getting ahead of it. You get your endorsements, you're ahead of a lot of these drivers. That's my big recommendation, is just getting your endorsements. But if y'all have any questions, reach out to me. Have a good one.